Darkness has a way of creeping into the smallest corners of our memories. Sometimes it doesn't come from real life, but from the strange and unsettling images we saw as children. For many, Courage the Cowardly Dog was more than a cartoon. It was a haunting experience. A late-night journey into stories that felt too terrifying for young minds, yet impossible to turn away from. While we often remember the recurring villains, Katz with his sly grin, Le Quack with his schemes, there were others. The one-time monsters. The strangers who appeared, terrified us, and vanished forever, leaving behind shadows that never really went away. Courage the Cowardly Dog wasn't built like other cartoons of its time. Shows like Dexter's Laboratory or Ed and Eddie thrived on humor and slapstick chaos, but Courage lived in a world much darker. The series carried a haunting atmosphere, one that mixed surreal visuals, uncanny sounds, and twisted storytelling into something unforgettable. At its heart, the show was about Courage, a small, pink dog trapped in a nowhere town surrounded by endless miles of desert. He was tasked with protecting his oblivious owners, Muriel and Eustace, from horrors they could barely see coming. That setup alone was terrifying because, unlike other cartoon heroes, Courage wasn't strong. He wasn't brave. He was a dog who shook, screamed, and cowered at every shadow. And yet, somehow, he always found a way to protect the ones he loved. This formula allowed the creators to introduce countless villains, monsters, and strange beings. Some returned across multiple episodes, becoming fan favorites. But hidden among them were the miscellaneous villains, the ones who showed up once, did their damage, and then disappeared. These weren't the flashy, reoccurring baddies. Instead, they were subtle, strange, and often far more terrifying. Their appearances were short, but their psychological impact was long-lasting. Why do we remember these villains so vividly? Because they often played on fears that went beyond the screen. They weren't just scary characters, they embodied nightmares that children and even adults could recognize: possession, isolation, mockery, the feeling of being trapped in a situation you cannot escape. When Courage faced them, it wasn't just about saving Muriel or escaping danger. It was about facing the primal fears that lurk in all of us. The art design of these villains was another crucial factor. Courage's world was already eerie, with its muted colors and barren desert landscapes. But the miscellaneous villains often looked even more disturbing. Some had distorted human features, their eyes too wide, their grins too sharp. Others barely spoke, letting silence and atmosphere do the work. A simple lullaby, a whispered insult, or an unsettling laugh could carry more weight than any act of violence. But perhaps the scariest thing about them was their unpredictability. With recurring villains like Katz, you knew his game. He was sly, cunning, always plotting. But with these one-time terrors, you didn't know what they wanted or how far they would go. Each appearance was a one-off nightmare with its own rules and its own logic. It felt less like a cartoon and more like a short horror story told around a campfire, except this story was animated, colorful, and aimed at children. That blend of innocence and terror made the fear hit harder. Take, for example, the demon in the mattress. The idea of possession of something evil taking over someone you love is terrifying in any context. But when it happened to Muriel, the gentle and loving grandmother figure of the show, it became almost unbearable. Watching Courage's only source of comfort turn into a monster was more than a cheap scare. It was a symbolic reminder of how fragile safety can be. One moment you feel protected, and the next, that protection is gone. Another aspect that made these villains unforgettable was how Courage always fought back. Not with fists or weapons, but with wit, persistence, and pure determination. The show didn't sugarcoat his fear. Courage always looked terrified, but he still acted. That made him relatable in a way most heroes aren't, and it made the villains, in turn, far more effective. Because if Courage was shaking in terror, we were too. As we move deeper into this list of Courage's scariest miscellaneous villains, remember these aren't just characters. They are memories. Fragments of childhood fears wrapped in animation. Some you might laugh at now, but others still have the power to make you uneasy when you close your eyes. So let's begin this journey back into nowhere, where even the one-time visitors left scars that lasted forever. Not every villain in Courage the Cowardly Dog became a recurring nightmare like Katz or Le Quack. Some only appeared once. But the horror they brought was unforgettable. These miscellaneous villains weren't bound by rules, and maybe that's what made them worse. They slipped into Courage's world like a bad dream, did their damage, and left us haunted. Let's walk back into those shadows. The demon in the mattress imagined the person you love the most turning into a monster before your eyes. That's what Courage faced when Muriel ordered a new mattress, only to find it possessed by a demon. It wasn't just a scary design, the deep, guttural voice, glowing eyes. And the way Muriel's gentle nature was replaced by violent rage hit hard. Muriel wasn't just Courage's owner. She was his safe place. Watching that safety get corrupted tapped into a fear deeper than ghosts or monsters. It was the fear of losing the ones who make us feel secure. The possession scenes, with distorted faces and evil laughter, felt more like something out of The Exorcist than a kid's cartoon. Freaky Fred. Few characters in the series are as unsettling as Fred. He wasn't a monster, nor did he have supernatural powers. Instead, he was a human being with a twisted obsession, hair. His eerie rhyming speech, calm delivery, and wide, fixed smile made him almost unbearable to watch. The scariest thing about Fred is how normal he seems at first. He's just Muriel's nephew visiting the farmhouse. But as he corners Courage, snipping away fur while repeating naughty, the episode shifts from uncomfortable to terrifying. Fred was a reminder that horror doesn't always come from otherworldly creatures. Sometimes it comes from people with quiet obsessions that turn dangerous. The Harvest Moon Spiriton like Fred or the Mattress Demon. The Harvest Moon Spirit wasn't loud or chaotic. It was calm, silent, and filled with power. This spirit appeared when Eustace disrespected the moon's harvest, demanding respect for ancient traditions. The fear here didn't come from jump scares, it came from atmosphere. The giant, expressionless face of the moon floating in the sky, watching, judging, and ready to punish. It was slow, inevitable horror. As children, we may not have understood the deeper theme of respecting nature, but the imagery was unforgettable. It taught us that sometimes the scariest force is the one that doesn't shout, but simply waits for you to realize your mistake. The Sandman dreams are supposed to be our escape. But in the world of Courage, even dreams weren't safe. The Sandman was a gaunt, skeletal figure with glowing eyes, who put Muriel into a deep sleep and threatened to trap her there forever. What made him so terrifying was the helplessness he created. Courage couldn't fight him physically. He had to enter the dream world, a place where rules didn't apply, and try to save her. The Sandman tapped into the universal fear of losing control, of being stuck in a dream you can't wake up from. His design, pale and almost corpse-like, added to the unease. He didn't need to shout. His quiet, deliberate presence was enough to freeze you, the perfectionist among all of Courage's villains. The Perfectionist stands out because she attacked not with claws or spells, but with words. She appeared in the episode Perfect, where Courage is criticized for everything he does. This villain whispered the phrase, "not good enough," over and over, planting seeds of doubt in Courage's mind. Her porcelain mask and stiff, doll-like movements made her visually disturbing, but her real power was psychological. She represented the fear of failure, the fear of never measuring up. For many viewers, especially children, that theme hit too close to home. The Perfectionist wasn't just an antagonist, she was the embodiment of our own inner voice, the one that tells us we'll never be perfect. Each of these villains came and went in a single episode, but their impact lasted far longer. They didn't need multiple appearances to stick in our minds. They only needed one. The demon showed us how fragile love can be. Fred reminded us that people can be scarier than monsters. The Harvest Moon Spirit revealed the weight of disrespecting forces greater than us. The Sandman stole the safety of sleep. And the Perfectionist whispered our deepest insecurities aloud. These weren't just villains, they were reflections of fears we still carry today. And that's why, even years later, when we think of Courage's world, their faces are the ones that linger in the dark corners of memory. Fear isn't always about what you see. In Courage the Cowardly Dog, Some of the most unsettling moments weren't jump scares or loud noises, they were quiet, drawn out, and strangely familiar. What made the miscellaneous villains so haunting is how they tapped into very human fears. They weren't just monsters of nowhere, they were reflections of things we all dread. Dressed in strange animation. The power of the uncanny many. Of Courage's one-time villains had designs that fell into the uncanny valley. They looked almost human, but not quite. Take the Perfectionist with her porcelain mask, stiff body, and jerky movements. Or the Harvest Moon Spirit, whose giant face seemed lifeless yet all-seeing. These designs made our skin crawl because they blurred the line between familiar and unnatural. We weren't watching giant robots or obvious aliens. We were watching distorted versions of people and symbols we already knew. The effect was subtle but powerful. It made us feel unsafe in spaces that should have been normal. Psychological horror over physical threats and like cats who wanted to scam or harm the family. Miscellaneous villains often worked on the mind. The Perfectionist didn't need weapons, her words cut deeper than any blade. The Sandman didn't attack Courage directly, he trapped Muriel in endless sleep, forcing Courage to face helplessness. Even Freaky Fred, with his scissors and obsession, wasn't physically violent. But his calm tone, repetitive rhymes, and obsession with naughtiness worked like psychological needles. These villains proved that sometimes the scariest thing isn't blood or gore. It's the slow erosion of your sanity. Isolation as amplifier of fear. Nowhere was already a place built for loneliness. The farmhouse stood in the middle of a desert that seemed to stretch on forever. No neighbors, no friends, no escape. This isolation made every villain encounter feel more dangerous. When Muriel was possessed by the demon in the mattress, there was nowhere to run. When the Harvest Moon Spirit demanded respect, there was no one to plead with but Courage. The desert became a metaphorical prison, no outside help, no chance of escape. Just Courage, his shaking paws, and the monster in front of him. That loneliness amplified every moment of fear, because the show reminded us again and again in Nowhere, no one is coming to save you. The corruption of safety. Another recurring theme was the idea of safety turning into danger. Muriel was always Courage's protector, his source of love and comfort. But when she became possessed or trapped in dreams, that comfort collapsed. Suddenly, the one person who gave Courage strength was gone, or worse, turned against him. That's what made villains like the demon in the mattress or the Sandman feel so heavy. They didn't just attack Courage. They twisted his safe spaces, reminding viewers that even the strongest bonds can be shaken. The fear of judgment and inadequacy. One of the most unique fears shown in the series came through the Perfectionist. Instead of fangs, she carried words like, "not good enough." For many children and even adults, this wasn't just a cartoon villain. It was the voice inside their own head. That's what gave her such staying power. She embodied something personal. She wasn't attacking Courage's body, but his self-worth. And because the show played her so straight mask, ruler, criticism, her judgment felt all too real. She wasn't simply scary. She was familiar, atmosphere over action. Courage didn't need constant chase scenes to scare us. Sometimes a single lingering shot was enough. The Sandman staring with glowing eyes. The Harvest Moon Spirit hovering in silence. Fred's grin held too long on screen. These moments gave us time to breathe in the discomfort, to let our imaginations fill the silence with what might happen next. That's what made the show stand out. It didn't try to rush fear, it let it crawl slowly, until we ask why they linger. The reason these villains linger in our memories because they attacked fears that don't fade. As adults, we may laugh at some designs, but the emotions they pulled out, the fear of losing loved ones, of being trapped, of being judged, of being powerless, those fears never go away. Courage was just a cartoon, but it touched on truths that sit in the back of every human mind. And it reminded us that fear doesn't always come from grand, recurring enemies. Sometimes it comes from the strangers who only visit once, but leave marks forever. So, when we think back on Courage's scariest miscellaneous villains, it's not just about their creepy voices or designs. It's about what they represented. They turned the everyday sleep, safety, family, self-worth into something fragile, something that could be corrupted at any moment. And in the middle of it all stood Courage, a dog who trembled and screamed, but still found a way to fight back. Asterisk fear has many faces. But in Courage, the cowardly dog, some of the scariest faces only appeared once. They didn't need recurring arcs or grand battles. They came, they disturbed, and they disappeared like strange dreams that wake you in the night but never fully fade. And that's what makes these miscellaneous villains so powerful. They were shadows of deeper fears, dressed in odd costumes, waiting for the perfect moment to remind us that nowhere is never truly safe. Take Benton Tarantella, for example, the decaying film director who lured Muriel into starring in his production. Benton wasn't just a creepy-looking corpse in a trench coat. He was manipulation itself, disguising his sinister plan under the mask of art. His dead eyes and slow, crumbling body gave him the appearance of something long past its expiration, yet still clinging to life. He proved that evil doesn't always come with glowing eyes and thunder. It can wear the face of a fading dream, waiting to drag you down with it. Then there was the Queen of the Black Puddle. Seductive, elegant, and terrifying, she rose from the depths of water to lure men into drowning. Her design was hauntingly beautiful, which made her more dangerous. She wasn't grotesque, she was alluring, the kind of danger you can't help but look at even when you know you should run. That duality, fear mixed with fascination, was part of her horror. She represented the kind of threat that doesn't chase you, but waits for you to willingly step closer. And in many ways, that's worse. Another forgotten nightmare was the clutching foot. At first, it seemed ridiculous, a giant infected foot growing from Eustace's leg. But the more the infection spread, the more disturbing it became. The foot developed its own voice, personality, and control, reducing Eustace into a vessel. It was grotesque body horror wrapped in cartoon absurdity. The kind of thing that makes your skin itch because it feels uncomfortably possible. The clutching foot wasn't just a parasite, it was the fear of your own body turning against you, these villains. Along with the demon in the mattress, Freaky Fred, the Sandman, the Perfectionist, and the Harvest Moon Spirit all share one trait. They didn't just scare Courage. They scared us. They weren't loud or flashy, they were insidious, slipping under the skin and nesting in the mind. Some attacked the body, some the spirit, some the mind. But all of them reminded us of the same truth. Fear is universal. And what makes these villains unforgettable is not only their design, but Courage's response to them. Courage was never brave in the way we expect heroes to be. He didn't charge into battle with confidence. He shook, he cried, he screamed. And yet, he acted. That's what made these encounters so memorable. The villains represented our deepest nightmares, but Courage represented our hope. Not the kind of hope that is fearless, but the kind that acts even when fear is overwhelming. When the Perfectionist whispered, "Not good enough," Courage still tried. When the Sandman stole Muriel's dreams, Courage found a way inside. When Benton Tarantella demanded Muriel star in his macabre film, Courage disrupted the production. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't powerful. He was terrified. But he didn't give up. That simple truth elevated these one-off villains beyond their episodes. They weren't just monsters, each one became a trial, a reflection of real human struggles, and a reminder that courage is not the absence of fear, but action despite it, and maybe that's why these characters still linger in our memories today. They showed us the horror of losing control, of being judged, of losing loved ones, of being consumed by obsession, of falling for temptation. They revealed that even in a cartoon desert town, the fears we carry inside are inescapable. And once you've seen them, you never forget. So when you close your eyes tonight and think of Courage the Cowardly Dog, ask yourself, what's the face that still returns to you? Is it the sharp grin of Fred? The pale mask of the Perfectionist? The endless stare of the Sandman? Or maybe it's one of the quieter monsters, waiting at the edges of memory, ready to remind you that even one-time visitors can leave eternal scars, because in Nowhere, no villain is ever truly gone.